Kanina, when I was reading your article, you had something there about, people perceive him as cold, as aloof, may sungit, and then you said, and it wasn't congruent. It was congruent, rather. I think you said, to what you experienced and what you saw in the workplace, and I did a double take because I wasn't sure if you really meant congruent or incongruent. But sure enough, it seemed as if you were saying, oh, meron talaga siyang side na ganon. Could you expound on that? Could you share that? If I got that correctly?
Yeah. I think it's also a little unfair to him. It makes him sound cardboard. If we just keep saying no, this guy is all work ethic and details, and he aspired to know everything about this administration, all true. But he was also like a pain in the butt as a boss. He was stubborn. He was a boss. I feel like he subjected us to boss stuff, and I think a lot of people who've been in the workplace know what it's like to have a boss who is always, always difficult, demanding, very high standards, but also in a non-work setting, he was also a pretty irritable person, a pretty annoying person sometimes, which is why I really had to tell myself, remind myself of how he grew up, and what it must have been like, and the pressures that he was under. And at the end of the day, my admiration for him, like I wrote in the article, outshines any resentment that I might have. But he was a difficult boss, and the way he would express his affection was by kind of picking on you, by noticing what you are.
In what way was he difficult? Was he demanding? Did he have a short temper? Did he cuss a lot? For example, well, I know he did.
No, he didn't. No. He never.
Was he very demanding? Nagdadabog ba siya? Ganun ba?
He never cussed. I don't think he cussed a lot.
No.
He was very gentlemanly in that way. He would always be the last to sit in any room. He would kind of check and see if all the ladies in the room have sat down or have gotten their food before he would get. So he was very gentlemanly in that way. But what was annoying about him?
Deadlines and shoes, ganun ba? How demanding was he?
No, he was
slave driver.
He was very demanding about the numbers. You could miss like 0.32, tapos 0.35 pala, patay.
Patay.
Another one would be, he would never. I don't think he thanked me. Maybe over 6 years, he thanked me once or twice over a span of 6 years. So if you do your job well, then that's expected, and if you mess up, then patay ka. And he was, he had a way of, when he would get angry, he would never shout, but he would spend maybe 1 hour, making you feel like, no, you made like a really big mistake and whatnot. He was also very stubborn. There were some days when we just absolutely knew the right thing to say. But he wouldn't, he had his own way of communicating and perceiving things. But like I said, these disagreements, I feel, don't take away from the leadership that he practiced. I think it actually was the definitive style of his administration.
And Gian, nobody's, I hope people understand, nobody's trying to take away from anything, but the access that you're giving us and these insights, you also touched on, speaking of stubbornness and perplexity sometimes, beyond annoyance, but perplexity. You were open enough to also say that particular moment with Mama Sapano and the arrival of the remains at Villamor Air Base, and PNoy electing to go to a car factory rather than welcoming the bodies there. What was going on there? It's just genuinely something that that Filipinos, obviously it affected him, it affected people's perception of him at that moment. But you wrote about it, and you said something about it. I was wondering if you'd be willing to share that and to expound on that.
Yes, yes. I began the article that I wrote, Remembering PNoy, with me kind of trying to understand the trauma of being born into a family that was just basically in the center of our country's political story. Your father is Ninoy Aquino. Before he went home in 1983, he takes his son aside and tells him, if anything happens, then you're the man of the house. Then Ninoy Aquino is assassinated. And I remember Pinoy telling us this. Everyone was crying, everyone was emotional, and he said, well, we can't all be crying. You know, if I cried too, then we would all be crying, and who would be the man of the house? It must have been a really traumatic experience. He was 22 years old. And let's remember that this is also the guy who, I think this was during the Cory Aquino presidency, visited his girlfriend in Alabang. And on the way back home was, there was an assassination attempt. And he told us about that. And he said, and I think some of his security detail died during that attempt. And he told us that he had some sort of survivor's guilt. So, minsan iniisip ko, siguro ako rin kung ganun pinagdaanan ko, magiging manhid din ako. So I was telling myself that because Mama Sapano was really a difficult time for me and for a lot of people working, a lot of younger people also in government. To me, the question was, how do I live with this? How do I live with, I guess, working for a president who ended up doing something that, I honestly, I disagreed with it. And basically, how do I live with it? And those were the stories I told myself. Not to kind of shield him with his trauma, but to kind of understand the difficult situation he was put in, and also how to live with it, how to maybe forgive it, even if he never asked for forgiveness. He might feel like he never had to. So that was kind of how I would deal with those situations. Mama Sapano being the most difficult one, because that was when the disagreements were, I think at their height. We never really, we didn't really go back and forth with him about it, but definitely, among ourselves, we discussed it very candidly.